Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Mike Adelizzi, CEO of the American Supply Association. The ASA is the trade association serving the plumbing and PVF distribution community. Mike is one of the more innovative association execs I've run across. And as you will hear, association management isn't about hosting parties and planning trade shows. Their role is more about using their collective resources to accomplish things that one company just can't do. I enjoyed getting a peek behind the scenes of the association, and I hope you do too. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by NSQL Distribution Software. NSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package. I say distribution-based because that's important. Many alternatives out there say they do distribution, but they really aren't very good at it. They're generally watered-down manufacturing packages with a few distribution features tacked on. I only recommend software packages that were purpose-built to serve distribution, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than NSQL Distribution Software at www.nsql.com. That's INXSQL.com. Hey, Mike, welcome to Distribution Talk. So glad to see you as always.
Jason, it's great seeing you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I wanted to jump in and get a little history lesson on you. As I mentioned, going on LinkedIn, I can't see anything about your past here before ASA. What were you doing before and how did you get involved with distribution?
Actually, I didn't realize that till you just told me that. So I have to go back and maybe update it. But it's kind of a strange pathway. So graduating college, my first job was with Quaker Oats Company. And my job was in the food service division. So I would sell to distributors and end users in Northern Illinois, Southern Wisconsin, Northern Indiana. So my job was to work with the distributors, then pull product through by going to the universities, nursing homes, and sell product. Even though people think Quaker Oats is a great brand, we had a whole host of brands that we were selling. And so left there, got out of that business, went into politics full time for about 10 years, something I was very passionate about, and actually got a couple of jobs working for a congressman, managing campaigns, raising money, and realized it's not a way to raise a family. So I said, I got to get back out of here. So ended up jumping into association management. And as a young age, I didn't know what an association was. You got to work for one of the big corporations. So one of the big contributors to a congressman I was working for headed up the Illinois branch of Associated Builders and Contractors, a contractor group, and needed an Illinois leader. So got that job, went from there to Mason Contractors Association, which was a national group, built them up, and left there and came to work for American Supply Association. So I love it. Different world between working for a contractor association and a manufacturer distributor organization. Working for a contractor group, long-term vision is 6 months, and with manufacturers and distributors, they'll look 10 years out. They were looking to revitalize ASA, and I love the challenge and came to work here about 15 years, I think, this September. So
definitely.
Yeah, love it.
Well, good.
So I started out in distribution, and I'm ending my career working for a distribution group. So it's kind of interesting how your career path
coming full circle.
Really.
It's so interesting, Mike. And I talk about this a lot on the show that I truly believe that distribution is a very solid, career path for a lot of people. And I know, our friend Dirk is out on the road right now, talking about the noble calling of distribution. And I think a lot of us would like to keep beating that drum, about distribution. And so it's interesting that you've come full circle and kind of seen the good, bad, and the ugly, especially now in what you've been doing.
Yeah. The interesting thing, the pandemic really elevated distribution. I mean, that's all you heard about for a year was supply chain. From not getting toilet paper to essential products, essential industry. We went from, what do you do? To, oh my gosh, everything has a supply chain, continuing to do that, Right. So it's really helped us a little bit in terms of creating interest and awareness of an industry. Of course, now we're competing with every supply chain right now for labor, but
absolutely
very interesting time. So
no, definitely. No, I would agree that it is an interesting time. And, I'm glad you said that we do compete with now everybody else,
Yeah.
now supply chains, starting to get cool. Takes a crisis to make it cool, I guess.
Yeah. I don't want to go through that again. That, you know what?
No, no, that was a little painful. A
Yeah.
little bit painful. Speaking of that and some of the challenges, especially in the supply chain, but other things, what are the biggest things that your members are facing?
I would say if you asked me this question a year or more ago, it wouldn't be that much. Today, it's kind of an unparalleled disruption, kind of a perfect storm.
Mhm.
Virtually everything now has become a priority for distributors. Labor number one.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we saw labor in our industry coming 4, 5, 6 years ago when we did a labor study. We knew half of our industry will be retired. 200,000 people, 100,000 were going to be gone probably in another 7 to 10 years from now. So we knew it was coming. We started ramping up for that.
Mike, we talked about that actually. If I recall correctly, you and I talked about that in July of 2018 when
Yeah.
Marshall and I came out to visit you.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
one of the big challenges. Interesting. Okay. Well, labor for sure. Yeah.
So we saw that coming, and now it's ramped up even more, right?
Yeah.
And now I don't want to say crazy prices. I just heard, some of these food chains are offering people $50,000 a year to be a cook. It's really created a lot of disruption from pricing
And
and
you get a signing bonus too. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, we went from, okay, we're going to have a big problem to holy cow, we got a really big problem now, for relevance and who we're going to bring in. So obviously the supply chain now being quote sexy, if you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
dub it,
Yeah. Sure.
is helping us a little bit, right? But enhanced competition, some more sophisticated customers. The competitors have
Right.
become very sophisticated and not just from other distributors, but from out, Amazon and all the other disruptors that are coming in our industry, and that more sophisticated customer with their experiences, what they want and how they're going to get it. Again, huge disruptors. Again, we saw that coming. That's not a secret. That's
Mhm.
been coming, and escalating costs, obviously inflation,
Mhm.
energy causing the cost to operate your business and distribute products is ramping up. In the last year, what has gone up almost 50% in gas prices, the lack of drivers and transportation. Again, we saw that couple of years ago with the regulations from government and how many hours people can drive a truck and that sort of thing has really hit our distributors. I mean, to the point where many of our distributors would send their trucks to go get product because they couldn't get
You're right.
the
The
product shipped out.
manufacturers. Yeah. You couldn't get the carriers to do it. Right.
Absolutely. And
Right.
now because of pandemic, the product, I
Yeah.
mean, wait, I can get it to you in November. Wait, November. This is June. I need to have it now.
Right. Right.
Well, I can't get you that product, but I can give you this product instead. Well, that's not what the customer wants. So again, a lot of that has to do with the pandemic, but then other things as well. But the big one, the big disruptor, a year ago, people wouldn't even talk about government. Today, we are under attack from
Mhm.
all factions of government, from tax increases and everything else that they're looking at to put on the backs of business owners, changes in tax policy, regulation. Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to, right now from our industry, there's a huge push both federally and statewide for decarbonization. So that's
Yeah.
local communities, states, what have you, eliminating the use of natural gas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, California is basically said you cannot build anything and put in natural gas any longer is what I've been told.
Absolutely. And it's not just California. There are virtually communities, local communities where a city will outlaw it. New York, the East Coast, they're all trying to push the elimination of natural gas, fossil fuels, because it's bad, right? Now, we think it's kind of hysterical because you go to California, they can't keep the electricity on. As soon as there's a wind,
Right.
they shut down the electric grid. So now,
Right.
before you can get a hot shower, now you can't even get a hot shower
Right,
because
right.
you had a water heater. And so we're fighting those battles. And
Yeah.
it's a hard battle to fight. So government really now has really caused huge disruption, and it's going to happen really for the next 2 to 4 years until things possibly change.
Interestingly enough, Mike, again, with your background, again, from the political campaign
Mhm.
side, it's understand that world a little better than some do. And I think that's a
Yeah.
huge value proposition, really for you in the organization when you're running up against it. Because let's think about it. The typical business owner, your member out there,
Hmm.
what background do they have dealing with the federal government or,
They don't. Yeah.
Congress or regulators or, anything? They don't have any background in that.
No. And you know what? They become intimidating. Oh, it's this. I'm afraid to talk to the congressman. No, you should. You got to protect your business. The other thing, you have to engage your employees too, because most owners are afraid to talk to their employees about
Mhm.
politics, about elections and who they support. But we see statistics that the number one source for education on issues is from an owner. Because if an owner can articulate that I'm supporting this person because they're in favor of X, Y, and Z, and that's going to help my business grow and help me employ you and give you raises and all that, most employees would lean in the direction of what their owner feels as opposed to what they see in the news. But most owners are afraid to talk about it. So we're trying to break that barrier too.
That's interesting, Mike, because yeah, I think that a lot of it comes from, the media portrayal. You're either, a
Hmm.
CNN guy or a Fox, guy, one of the other, and you're afraid of employees by being maybe one-sided or the other, or even touching that third rail there, because that's such a polarizing area to discuss. And I think that you're absolutely right that gosh, I feel like, that's almost like a webinar you all, need to put out, is how to talk to your employees about politics.
And we do that. We don't do a webinar, but we certainly push information out.
Yeah.
We're gaining success on that. Good example is in California. So 10 years ago, there was that big push for no lead plumbing products,
Right,
right?
right, right.
So they passed in California, and then quickly right after, it became a national standard. A lot of
Yeah.
distributors had product sitting on the shelf that
Right.
on December 31st, it was a good product that could be sold legally. And one day later, you had to throw it out. And
Yeah.
that one issue 10 plus years ago is what spurred the association to hire full-time lobbyists. We always use contract people.
Mhm.
And with
Mhm.
associations, you have a contract person. You have a budget set aside, $30,000 or whatever. And
Sure.
you hoped you
Sure.
never had to use it. And you certainly hope you didn't have to go over that because you didn't budget for more.
Right.
And that was the big issue for us because we said, never again, we're going to make sure that we have a representative out there making us aware and helping organize the industry on issues. Well, it came back again a year ago. Last year, California
Mhm.
went to phase two. So even though we went to virtually zero lead, they want to go to virtually zero lead now.
Mhm.
Industry has a standard that we work together to advocate. So by 2024, we will meet this new lead law, this new lead
Mhm.
level, if you
Mhm.
will. California wanted to ramp it up to, last year they wanted it to be effective 2021, this 6 months ago. We
Mhm.
were lucky enough to beat it back. It's back again. And they want to speed that up. Well, the manufacturers are telling people in California that if you make this effective in January of 22, we will not have product available for consumers to buy because each product has to go through extensive testing to prove it meets this new lead level. And they're gearing up for 2024, not 2022. Well, they don't care because they feel, well, we want to make sure we have zero lead in drinking water. The funny part about it, Jason, and this is what we were very successful last year doing, is 10 years ago when they made industry ramp up and go through all this craziness. Now, we're in favor of no lead. We're not in favor of
Yeah.
putting lead
Yeah,
in
I
product,
get it.
right?
No, no, I get it.
But now the faucet has no lead. Unfortunately, the lines still are the old pipes that have lead in it. 10 years ago, the California legislature said every water agency had 10 years, which just ended last July, to
Mhm.
report to the state what pipes in their communities had to be replaced. So, meanwhile, we had to ramp up to have no lead in our product, but there was still lead in the water. Okay. Now they go through this next step with we now want you to ramp up and now meet this next level. And the water agencies have 10 more years from now to replace the lead pipe. And we think it's obscene. It's
It's a little
absurd.
bit of a double standard.
Right. So we now got our members to write, and we generated thousands of letters last year, and we won the day because the common sense said, yeah, wait a minute, come on. So you got to have an advocate out there and working
Yeah.
on your behalf.
I think that's interesting because a lot of people who are members of associations don't really know what you all do from that behind the scenes kind
Right.
of advocacy
Right.
and that kind of fighting. And so, no, I think it's a really interesting one. And actually, one of the things that you all have done for a number of years, if I understand correctly, is that congressional fly-in, or it's been virtual the last couple of years. Could you talk about that? That was actually kind of a fascinating thing for me. That wasn't something that, when I was a distributor and I was involved with my association, we didn't have that.
Mhm.
So how did that come about, or has that been around a lot, decades, or what's going on with that?
It's been around, not super effective. Clearly, one person, one organization cannot do justice to protecting an industry. You
Mm-hmm.
need to engage many people in the process so those elected officials hear many voices and not just one, right?
Right.
Because it's all about pressure. It's all about, you see going on right now with school boards. You
Mm-hmm.
got people yelling and screaming at a school board meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough to sit up against all that. So, of course, we don't want our guys running in the halls of Congress yelling and screaming, but, we need to engage the industry. Before we did that, we needed to make sure we had the proper team to educate our members and
Yeah.
support that decision. So we hired a lobbyist 10 years ago. A couple of
Mm-hmm.
years ago, about 4 years ago, we hired a full-time codes and standards individual that goes to all the code meetings and to protect our interest. And funny, you would think there's no issues there. There are issues. We're dealing right now, it seems like a small issue, but it's a big one, is press connect fittings. So, where they have, if you put two pieces of copper tube
Uh-huh.
together, you got to
Uh-huh.
solder it, right?
Yep.
Takes time. Well,
Yes.
there's a new system where they put the pipe together with a connector and they crimp it, and it's less labor, speed of construction, all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. We're fighting to protect that because there are groups, union groups, if you will, that are fighting against the use of that. So here we're fighting battles where you would think we'd all be aligned together. We're fighting battles to make sure that products that can be used are still allowed to
Mm-hmm.
be used. Our philosophy is let the consumer decide at the local level. They want cast iron or plastic. We just
Mm-hmm.
want all products to be acceptable. Things like this, why can't we use press connect fittings? So we have code people. Now we're trying to engage our members more and more in helping them write letters. We have a system right now where if we have this lead issue, we pre-populate our website with the
Mm-hmm.
letter. Our members and their employees can go to our website, put in their zip code,
Mm-hmm.
and it automatically sends the letter to their state senator, state representative, congressman, president. Back when we were protecting the industry on being essential, when things were being shut down,
Right.
we 10,000 letters, 8,000 letters we generated on the federal level to make sure plumbing and plumbing got through
Mm-hmm.
pretty easily. But it was like, well, wait a minute, don't forget about the industrial, because we're supporting oil refineries, food processing. If food is essential and that factory goes down, they got to make sure they have the pipes and valves in there to make sure that food processing plant continues on. So
Right.
we had to really work hard federally. Then every state did their own standard. So we were fighting on a state by state basis as well. Pennsylvania was one, Michigan, they shut down our industry. They didn't care. So we were fighting all those battles. So engaging the members in letter writing, visiting their members of Congress, that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing, very, very important. The key to all that, though, is getting members to do it when there isn't a crisis.
Right. Right.
So if I can educate you on something, Jason, this is what we do and why it's important and all that. When something bad happens, you're already aware of our industry. Once they pass something, it's hard to change it.
Right.
It's easier, and that's what we're doing now, is trying to, on a state by state basis, if something pops up in Michigan, we want to jump on it, because if it passes Michigan, those people in Illinois or Wisconsin say, hey, let's do the same thing. And then it becomes a domino effect. So
No, it's very interesting, because I've always wondered what a government affairs person or that role in the trade association was all about. And
mhm.
no, it's a great explanation of that, Mike. There are a lot of behind the scenes battles that people just don't see. So many people have this image that the association is all about putting on parties at a trade show, and those kinds of things. And obviously, there's the educational component that you all, are very,
Mhm.
very steeped in. But
Right.
still, I don't think many people really understand that kind of battlefront that you all get into.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, when you mention putting on parties, the four value areas for any association with ours is advocacy, education, business intelligence, and networking. We
Yeah.
rarely talk about networking because, at least in our industry, you've got the buying groups and they really do a phenomenal job for networking. So we don't
Mhm.
really push too hard on that front. But the other three areas are areas that you've got to have a unified front where everyone is pulling together. And we were talking about advocacy. We've been working with our buying groups to hold one of their meetings in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done that with affiliated distributors. We've done it with WIT before they merged with Embassy.
Charlie's group.
We're
Yeah.
slowly building commitment that I think we can do it again. If we can have one of the three buying groups meet in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
the AD one, we had 300 people. When I
Mm-hmm.
do a fly-in, it's 30 people. So they were there. They carved out 4 or 5 hours. We made appointments for them to all go up on Hill. And we had hundreds of people going up on Capitol Hill under AD. And we had hundreds of people under WIT. ASA doesn't have to be there. We're facilitating, we're coordinating, we're leading them, but the issues are all the same within the buying group.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're pushing more and more in the future to get other entities to go there. Most of them are members, some aren't, but it doesn't matter if you're a member or not. If you're a non-member, but you're advocating on tax reform or whatever, it doesn't matter that you're a member of ASA. We were able to engage you and get you helping the cause. So you got to really organize the entire industry. The other thing too is, we were talking about like what distributor associations are doing, all these things that are attacking our members. We've been thinking about every year for the last 12, 13 years, we've been strategic planning. A couple of years ago, we identified the three biggest issues facing distributors today. Obviously, labor. We saw that
Yep.
coming a mile
Yep.
away. Acquiring good talent, technology. Again, it's no secret. Amazon's
Mm-hmm.
been attacking us, and Home Depot now is really going after our sector.
Mm-hmm.
People don't always see it, but slowly but surely they're taking a little bit of business every year, every month from traditional distribution, and then preparing our members to compete in the future. Our members positioned and their company strong to remain relevant 10 years from now. We call that vitality because, there's multiple levels of a distributor, right? You've got those progressive folks that are way ahead of everybody. It's like,
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
Then you've got the early adopters. They see what the big guys are doing and they jump in. Then you've got the late adopters. Those are the ones that want to do it, but I'm not going to buy that flat screen TV at $2,000. I'm going to wait for it to be $400 at Costco. Then I'll jump in.
Yeah. Then I'm in.
Right. And then we call them the lifestyle folks that,
Lifestyle.
they're
Yeah.
serving a market. They're doing a great job, but they don't have a transition. So when they decide to hang it up, they're gone. They'll either be acquired or they're done, right? So how do you serve all those folks? And the main thing is, how can we prepare our members? So we've invested serious dollars in those three areas. One we call Project Talent. So we are doing a lot of social media, advertising, building awareness of our channel, directing them to our member websites and let them sell those individuals on career opportunities. We've got a whole host of tools and things that members can take free of charge to support their recruitment efforts. So that's a big plus what we're doing. We started that last fall. We're launching the Vitality Growth Assessment Survey. So we partner with a company out of Oregon called New Edge. They do a lot of Fortune 500 work, and we're preparing a survey free of charge. Every member company, whether you're a manufacturer, rep, or distributor, will have access to it. 10 of your key people will complete this survey, and it will spit out a confidential report as to where your strengths are and where you need to invest. Are you strong with strategic planning, or do you need to ramp up strategic planning? Are you strong with this, or you're weak with this? And it's going to give our members a report as to how well they're positioned to compete in the future. And then our job is to continue to provide resources, maybe some new resources we've never done, to help our members be able to compete against the Amazons and the Home Depots and all the rest. So these are three mega things that we've been thinking about for really the last 2-3 years. And we're now funding to the tune of about $1 million a year that we're investing in some of these new things that weren't around 2 years ago.
Well, I think, Mike, you really got to be looking at the changing demographic. That's really, I think, what drives this innovation in in the association is you do have a changing demographic. As you said, a lot of the lifestylers, they're probably, kind of getting up in age, to a point where, they're going to be gone and they're going to be replaced in one way, fashion or another, whether it's they go away and their employees disperse and start their own companies, or perhaps that there's a sale or whatever happens there. But you're going to see a different demographic coming into prominence, in your association, and that's got to be it's got to be something you're always thinking about is, how am I going to serve it, and what are the needs of this new demographic coming in?
Well, absolutely. And the younger generation, unlike their parents, they would go to association meetings. That's how they built their networks. The younger folks today, they don't want to go to meetings. And that's what charged us years ago to start thinking about, well, what can the association do to support them where they would see value? That's why you see things in business intelligence. The program Connect,
Yes.
was an unbelievable timed program to come out where they can share best practices virtually without
Yep.
having to get on a plane and go someplace, where their predecessors would love to go on a plane and go someplace. They don't. They're too busy with Little League and family obligations and all that. So if they can connect and learn something from their peers without having to get on a plane, and that Connect offered that opportunity. So,
And we truly appreciate that you jumped on that,
yeah.
actually.
Well, it was your vision, and here's the thing too, associations, we try things, sometimes we fail,
Yeah.
and you can't give up. I mean, we bombed on doing an in-person Connect program. Remember,
Right.
we offered
Yep.
3 and they bombed. We lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And at
Yeah.
the time, you guys sat down and said, we love the concept. The problem with your concept is your Connect was once a year. And
Mhm.
let's talk about connecting them once a month in
Right.
small groups. And we invested heavily to get it going. And,
You did.
and hopefully the members now are paying their way. But what a great visionary program to be able to offer that to our folks, especially as the pandemic hit. We were
Right.
offering this program right at the time that this was coming out. We looked like geniuses.
Totally. Sometimes better to be lucky than good.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Well, I like to think we were good. We sat down and listened to
you're
you,
pretty
so we
good.
were
Yeah.
good. We were good.
Okay. One of the things that you all got involved with is this D.Next Innovation Lab. Tell me, if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about that.
So the D.Next lab is one of the 3 big initiatives, right?
Yeah.
Technology.
Right.
So all about investment. We initially invested 50 grand and we brought 6 visionary distributors that were not part of ASA's governance structure. We felt it was important that we had people that weren't going to board meetings because we were afraid that the information they provide would, well, ASA is doing this, so we're going to be the mouthpiece for that. We wanted big thinkers. So we brought them to Chicago through a series of meetings and said, what's keeping you up at night? What are the big disruptors that you see coming, right? Well, obviously, technology was one of them. And we can't out Amazon Amazon. We
Right.
don't have the budgets. I mean, as an association to say we're going to get into the technology business. So we felt what we needed to be able to do is to be able to educate our members about what was coming. And the folks that were in that group, what resonated with me is they said, we know Amazon. Amazon actually doesn't scare us. We feel we can compete with Amazon. What scares us is what's coming down the pipe that we just don't see. What's the next Amazon no one sees that's going to catch us,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I was turned on to, at the University of Illinois in Champaign, they have a research park down there. And there were
Mhm.
about 80 companies that had innovation labs. So from Verizon to Caterpillar, a Gray Bar. That's where
Mhm.
I went with our buddies at the electrical distributor. We went down to see the Gray Bar lab. AARP had a lab. Brunswick,
Oh, interesting. Huh.
and they were the only real association. It was like, well, why do they have a lab? Well, they were researching how they can use technology to help with cognitive, memory care for seniors, and using technology to help them with that. And I thought, well, that's pretty
Interesting.
cool. So
Yeah.
we left that meeting, along with the folks at the distributors, and both of us were like, we got to do this. Yeah, but I had no idea what would we do down here,
What are you
right?
gonna do?
What are you
Right.
gonna do?
Right.
Yeah,
I
let's
like
have
it.
the
I just
lab.
don't know
What
what
are
to
we gonna
do.
do?
Yeah.
So we put
Yeah.
everybody in a van. They all flew to Chicago. We drove them down in a high windstorm. I was the driver. That wasn't allowed. So they made fun of me the whole time.
Sure.
But we went down to tour what was going on down there as a
Yeah.
potential for this technology concern, right? And they were blown away. They left that meeting convinced that we had to open a lab to help our industry, our members understand what's going on. What are other industries doing that we're not aware of? What's the next disruptor coming? How can distributors access technology reasonably to be competitive? Things of this nature. As they went from lab to lab, the one comment was, these kids that are doing this work in these other labs, because they're all like grad students
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, they leverage the talent that's down there, and they're in the corner, no shoes, ponytails, cuddled up with a computer, hidden in the corner. It's like, we don't have anyone that looks like that in this industry, but they're thinking about stuff. They're seeing things happening in other areas. And we said, we got to tap into that. So we have a list of 12 projects. We opened it last year during the pandemic. They've completed a
Mhm.
couple of projects. Some of them are low-lying fruit. One project, for example, that that we did was we kept hearing from some manufacturers that we're losing market share to the Home Depots
Okay.
because of hours of service, because of responsiveness of distributors to customers beyond the top 10 customers.
Okay.
So Saturday afternoon, plumber needs a water heater, calls their distributor. Who's it for? Nope, sorry, I'm not opening up. Right. So they go to Home Depot and get a water heater. Right. And now they're still committed to buying from the distributor, but now you've given him the experience of going to a
You've
competitor.
opened
Now
the door. Right.
open
Yeah.
the door.
You've opened the door.
Right.
Right.
And Home Depot's become more aggressive to go after these folks. Right. So, Sunday, nope. So how can we make our members aware that there is a market share loss occurring? Granted, it's not widespread. Granted, your big
Mhm.
customers are still your big customers. So we did two things. We surveyed the contractors' buying habits, right? The
Mhm.
funny thing was, even though the contractor said that they're virtually 100% happy with their distributor, I think it was roughly 40% of their purchases were non-distributor purchases. Amazon,
Yeah.
hardware store,
Yeah.
other place. Even though they were happy, 100% happy, they were getting product from someplace else. Maybe Amazon. They were getting
Right.
something shipped in that they got next day. Now you can't do every product that way, but once you start down that path, you've opened, like you said, you open the door. So
Yeah.
we published that result because again, this is what's happening. Think about what you're doing, how you service your customers, number
Sure.
one. Number two, in that original think tank that we did with the 6 distributors, there were a number of things that they talked about. One was, once someone finds out how to deal with credit, we're going to be out of business, because that was the one thing distributors offered. We were stupid enough to offer credit. Right. So, and that's how we were able to maintain business. And the other thing was, our employees provided technical support to the customers that the Amazons couldn't. So while we were surveying the contractor in terms of their buying habits and
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
are they doing? Plus, again, the younger contractors that were coming into business didn't have the old relationships that the older contractors with the older distributors had, right?
Right.
They don't care that it's my buddy, right?
Yeah.
So we surveyed outside salespeople for the distributors. And
Mhm.
it came back overwhelmingly that they could not articulate the value that a distributor offered to a contractor. Even though the owner felt, well, we have this technical support that we can give, and that sets us apart from the Amazon, their teams couldn't articulate that. And boy, a lot of distributors grabbed onto that
Sure.
and make sure
Absolutely.
that hopefully change. So that's the type of thing we're trying to do down there. Another one
Okay.
is technology. Well, you've probably heard the horror stories. Distributors looking for new software and new
Sure.
technology.
Oh, yeah.
Scariest thing they can do. They spend years doing it. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and they realize, oh, it
Mhm.
was the wrong one. Right. So the initial plan was to have the lab get all the software and break it. What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We thought, that's not going to happen. So what we're doing, we're taking kind of a page out of Connect and we're doing a technology users group. So
Mm.
bring the distributors together and say, I'm thinking about doing this, and have others say, here's my experience. They said X, it's really Y. You buy this, but you got to buy these extra modules. Or, you know what,
Mhm.
this is what I'm doing. And let them share amongst themselves rather than us trying to be the technology expert. Let them share their experiences. And it's
Okay.
kind of not happened. I think each software company has their own quote user group, but we
Sure.
rather let the distributors vet the software. So that's the type of thing we're doing. And how can we access technology, marketplaces? There's been a lot of discussion about how can distributors offer a marketplace. I mean, that's a major thing. I know a number
Sure.
of the groups have been talking about how can we do that. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but so we now have a lab with roughly
Yeah.
five or six grad students, undergrad students, all working under the tutelage of a VP of innovation down there that we stole from Caterpillar. And
Okay.
she's been running our lab down there for just celebrated 1 year.
Fantastic. I mean, it's doing the thing. And I think really, Mike, that really goes back to the message of where does an association fit in a business? Where does the association fit? And it's doing the things you can't do for yourself. I mean,
Right.
that's ultimately, I think, you've got this so many heads in the room that can come together and work on a problem that nobody could tackle by themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the two biggest areas, obviously advocacy.
Yeah.
right? If we can get 200,000 people in this industry, if we can get them all engaged, we could be formidable as an industry protecting our interests, right?
Sure.
That's number one. Number two is strategic vision. What's the
Yeah.
future going to look like? And we're spending more and more time to try to help identify what that future is going to look like.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
every business owner can make decisions for themselves how they want to compete, but give them a glimpse as to what's coming.
Yeah.
And those are a
Yeah.
couple of areas that, generally speaking, members don't see us doing. But you're leading that industry. I don't say we, I mean our members. I've been lucky. We've got some really, really great visionary leaders that are willing to come together and put their competition off to the side and say, this is for the good of the industry. And then to say, let's do it. Rarely have they told us no.
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. That's one of the nice things, and that's what I've loved working with the members of your association in particular. Just these folks really want the whole thing to work well. The whole industry to work well. I mean, their belief is, again, rising tide, lifts all boats. That's the mentality that I see in some of those powerhouse members that you talk about, and even honestly, it's actually a little more widespread because many associations I know you might have a dozen that kind of push the initiatives.
Hmm.
Whereas I think you're at least triple that, of people that
Yeah.
are really raising their hand and saying, "Yep, I want to be a part of that."
Yeah. What's fun, we did this again literally 14 years ago. We didn't have a strategic plan as an organization. That was one of the first things I looked for is what's the plan? Where are we going? And we
Yeah,
didn't have one.
yeah, yeah,
So we
sure.
we had one done 5 years prior by the exec committee, kind of a series of 1 year things that we were going to do. So we said, all right, we're going to bring everyone to our winter meeting. Every volunteer was invited. We had 65, 75 of our 120 volunteers come to the Don Cesar Hotel in Tampa in
Hmm.
February. They never saw the outside over 2 days. We brought in this guy, Glenn Tecker, and it was kind of fun to watch. The first couple of hours, people were back in their seats with their arm folded. And
Yeah,
by lunchtime, they're all leaning in. And that was our very first long range strategic plan. What could we do, over the next 5, 10, 15? Where are we going? We accomplished virtually everything in 3 years. But every year now, we offer all the volunteers to come. This year, we're actually bringing the Ed Foundation trustees to come as well.
hmm.
And that's hard to do, to organizing 100 opinionated people into one cohesive vision of where we want to go. But it's worked, it's worked. And so now we're looking back. All right, we're doing this for 10 years. We don't want to be in the old position of, well, we're doing this because this is what we always done. Right. So we tend to look at things and can we sunset some programs, which we have,
Sure.
all right, it's not value. We're not doing it anymore. It served its purpose or we accomplished it. And
Yeah.
then you move on, you moved on. So it's fun. It's fun to watch that happen. To me, the most fun, we had a facilitator for about 4 or 5 years. And then some of the volunteers said, well, we can lead the group. And they did a great job for 2 years. It was really actually pretty cool. But after that, they said, we're not going to do this anymore. And that's when we brought Dirk Beveridge in.
Oh
Dirk,
yes, the Energizer Bunny of distribution.
yeah, he brought it in. He was the facilitator during all of our issue strategic action teams, we call it, that we came up with those
Yeah,
three mega
yeah,
goals. So very, very cool process. And, it's because we have folks that say, let's do it. Let's do it.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been awesome.
Oh, that's great, Mike. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's a really interesting look. And I think looking at what the value proposition of an association is and how that's going to play to that next generation. I think that's really the thoughts that have to go through your head on a regular basis. And it sounds to
Mhm.
me like you all have really jumped on that. And I can just see that whole strategic planning process with Dirk. I mean, I've spent plenty of time with Dirk, and I can see how that would be actually a pretty fun deal. He's a high energy individual. You just can't help but
Yeah.
catch a little of that energy when you do that. So
Yeah. It's worked for us.
yeah, absolutely.
So
And I think that is a great byproduct of that kind of investment in that time. So
yeah.
well, hey, Mike, I really appreciate your time on this, and I hopefully it's been fun for you to talk about the association and about what you all are doing, and I think that was fun. Watching you get excited about stuff, and you've always been that association exec that's been excited about your industry and get excited and animated about it.
Well, you kind of think, well, at least we're doing something to make a difference, right? And
Yeah,
not every association does it. some of the
Yeah.
stuff we're doing, they ask about it and, oh, we
Sure.
can never do that. Oh, we can't
That's
afford
just
that.
too
Well,
hard.
you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
We can't afford it either. We go out and have to raise money to do it too. I have a target on my back. People see me coming and they kind of go the other way because they figure
Right.
it'll cost too
Hold
much.
on to their wallet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Here comes Mike.
But I mean, you have to, because like any business, there are inflection points with any business.
Yeah.
And if you don't make changes every so often, you're not going to be relevant anymore. Same with an association. When I first came on board, we literally had a trade show and it was dying. I mean, we brought in 250,000 every other year. Manufacturers were buying up booths simply to support the organization. We hardly had attendance. And one of my first meetings, I was with the manufacturers and they said, we don't want to do this anymore. I said, okay, it's done. Well, wait, Mike, no offense, but do you have authority to kill it? I go, it's dead. Just look at it. But we still want your money. And we're going to figure out a way to take that money off your hands, right? Instead of through a trade show.
Yeah.
Took us a couple of years and we went to a straight conference and we came up with a thing called Supplier Partner. And Supplier Partner is a marketing promotional partnership with the manufacturers. So we have 4 levels, 50,000, which is platinum, 30, which is gold, 15 silver, 7,500 is bronze. They get all kinds of benefit at convention, but it wasn't convention sponsorship. It's a marketing thing. We promote you all year long. We went from basically $125,000 a year in support to the organization. We just topped $1 million this year, and it continues to grow. And that's revenue that we've been able to invest in new programming. A lot of the stuff, dues doesn't pay for it all. So because of that support and everything, we've been able to reinvest, and it continues to grow. So you've got to always reinvent yourself and look outside the box. And okay, you can't hang on to things that just aren't working anymore. So it's been fun. You know what? Because I have good folks that, okay, what do we do next? Well, wait a minute. We just finished this. Give me a break. But no, it's fun. It's fun working with you and having you help our members. It's been a great partnership. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, my friend. Well, hey, thanks again, for taking the time to speak with me, and hopefully the listeners get a chance to understand a little bit more about the behind the scenes here. So
I hope so.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Take care.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.